Chapel Greenville, Texas on a Wednesday night. Going back to the announcements, there's a picture of the church. Left side for Sundays, right side for Wednesdays, Tuesdays, and Friday mornings. And if you're trying to go into the church side on Sunday morning, please go on the low side. If you go on the Johnson Street side, there's a sign by the door. You'll see it. Really easy to go. We invite you to come. You guys know where it is. I'm talking to the people on the camera. Alrighty. Second thing we have is women's ministry. That happens on Tuesday nights, going through 2 Thessalonians, but soon to go to the Corinthians. Staying with some Paul there. Some fun theology side. You have a blast with that one, I'm sure. What comes next on our slides? Wednesday. You know what? It's, hey, when everything breaks on today's Maury Povich. First Wednesday of each month is and the next one we're doing is eschatology. I'm going to step out of frame for just a moment because we got to fix our backdrop once again. Ian, come up here with a roll of tape. We're going to fix our backdrop. You got to move that chair too while we're at it. You probably can only see a shadow of me right now. And the reason you can only see a shadow of me is because the absolute brightness of that backlight. We're going to fix that with stage lighting. Otherwise, just look at the shadow of me until Ian gets that corrected, and we'll be happy. So the next special Wednesday, which is 2 Wednesdays away, not this one coming, but the one after that one, we're going to be looking at eschatology, which that's a good show. Hopefully driver's ed is over by then. I don't know. We'll see. We'll find out. Friday mornings, we're calling it Anchored Bereans, kind of a change up of what we were doing. And we're going through Colossians right now. Very good study. We'd invite you to come out. It's early. Javier, how early is it? Too early, according to him. And so we would invite you to come out for that one, but ain't going to happen for Javier at least. But some of us don't mind waking up that early. I'm already up. Might as well come to church. And then what do we have on the list after that? Oh, Wednesdays we're going through the 2 Chronicles. And tonight, I know you want to turn your Bibles and get there ready. We're in 2 Chronicles 27 tonight. And we'll be looking at King Jotham. But we'll cover that in just a moment. And then the next thing on our list, communion. So we do that on the first Sundays now. Next. Okay, the upcoming fellowship meal. Tres de Mayo. It's, to what? Yeah, that's what I say, Tres Mayo. 3rd of May, we'll be doing what we typically do the Cinco de Mayo theme. So Mexican food, whatever your interpretation, whatever. You have to use a longer strip of tape to hold that sheet up. See how it works almost for a second? And then it goes away. Anyways. You can't climb ladders. You're not supposed to. Anyways, we're going to get this backdrop issue fixed. I think the people of Kavanaugh would not be happy if we started nailing into their walls, but that might be the next option. Or maybe we could put some brackets. We'll figure it out. Ooh, Romans, that's happening on Sunday mornings. I'm trying to stall until they get the backdrop fixed, and then we'll be happy again. So Romans is definitely happening on Sunday mornings. Actually, here's a wild part about this. We're almost done with the book of Romans. Did you know that? So we have but one chapter left. We're actually going to cover that one chapter this coming Sunday. Now you say, well, that's a long chapter, John. Well, of course it is, except there's a lot of basically names. So not that we don't want to concentrate on that. We're not going to concentrate on that. We're digging down the theology of it. If you want to see all the people who are involved in it, that's perfectly fine. We support that 8 kinds of ways. But anyways, so that's coming up then. And what we've toyed with the idea of is moving to the book of Acts next. And I'll tell you where I'm struggling on this, and you guys can vote with me, okay? Normally, I like to find the book and just run with it. So, like if you were to do the Gospel of John, then we'd do the Epistles of John, then the Revelation. If we're doing stuff with Paul, you have to kind of hop in and out of. Matthew wrote a book, John Mark wrote a book, then Luke did not only Luke, but the book of Acts. So in theory, I'd go to the book of the book of Luke first. But I think I'm going to the book of Acts. And so maybe we go to the book of Luke after that. We have the repair product. I'll set that to the back. Hey, you can see me now, all the way. Just wait, and moments later, it'll be coming rolling down. Patricia, you didn't grease that wall, did you? Anyways, she's like, no. I think they'd get upset, though, if we put something up there. But I'm considering it. Anyways, but that's what we got coming up. Any questions, any big things on that? No? All right. Moving on into the summertime, everything's rolling pretty smooth, so we're excited for that. I'm going to do something real quick, and every time, okay, we're just going to notice we're going to be 10 minutes off. I set my timer here because we don't have our back TV set up. We're going to get that, though. I'm feeling more and more convinced like we got to do that sooner rather than later. All righty, we're in 2 Chronicles chapter 27. We're plowing through the book of Chronicles. Now, here's a part with this one. Tonight, we're only 9 verses long. Now, you can go either direction with that, only being 9 verses. And, on a good, New Testament book, when we're really digging down deep into theology and all that stuff, 9 verses can take forever. This is what I've been trying to be very careful of, is I don't want to just teach, let's just go a chapter a season, or, a chapter a night or whatever like that, or a chapter in the daytime. That's a bad way to measure it. And so what we would rather do is look at actual things that are happening. You can't do that with the book of Psalms because some of them are very small and it just moves so rapidly. But in the situation that we're in now, I want to look at one king per week. And if a king stretches out to multiple weeks, then that's what happens, and I don't have a problem with that. But I don't want to throw 2 kings in on the same week. Now, we have kind of an interesting issue on this one, only in that we do have the kings there, or the specific king that we have. But if you go back to the previous chapter 26, you'll find that this guy has actually more or less been there already. So Jotham was going to become king. His dad Uzziah, which you talked about last week, remember Uzziah was doing pretty well. I mean, he did mostly what was right in the sight of the Lord, except he went into the temple and he was trying to act like a priest. And we talked about this at length too. Who is the only person before the time of Uzziah? Let me put it plainly so we know this, and then we're going to make our attachment and go on from there. But at the time when Uzziah did this, who was the only person to ever have been able to claim the title of both king and priest? It was Melchizedek. And you find Melchizedek, and of course the description you find in the book of Hebrews shows that he was from everlasting and all that. So we would say Melchizedek is Jesus. We would say it was a Christophany, or picture type of Christ, whatever like that. But I would tell you in what I'm seeing when I'm reading it, is that is an appearance of Jesus in the Old Testament. King Saul goes to the thing of where he tries to basically act on both sides, and then when King Saul did his bit, of course he was, lack of better words, he was in disobedience sacrificing. And you think, well, Uzziah, all he was doing was lighting the incense and so on. If that's all he was doing, well, he was taking the job of the priest. Think about it this way. If you're doing a job and somebody comes in and takes over, and I know this because sometimes I'll come over and try to fix or help or whatever like that, and then I steamroll into the operation. I've taken over a job and it's upset and annoyed people. Don't shake your head yes. Anyways, the priests have the job, not the king. The king has his job, and the king needs to keep with his job and keep doing his job, and that's important. But there is a division between the two of them, and that's what took down Uzziah. Now, Jotham being his son, and you saw that back in the previous chapter, where basically he was acting as king in place of his dad, because his dad had been given leprosy. Well, why did he get leprosy? Because he blasphemed God. You say, well, hold on a second. Blasphemed? Yeah, lighting incense is blasphemy? Well, when you're acting in part or trying to play the part of the Messiah, then yeah, it is. Well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. I think we give these people too little credit, thinking that they have no idea what's going on. They've been communicated to by God, by the actual creator of the universe, saying this is how you've got to do it. So I don't think he was as innocent or as ignorant to the situation as we might proclaim. I think he was absolutely guilty. Not to run Uzziah down, but he knew better. He should have known better. If he didn't know better, he definitely should have known better. So going now into our passage, we're going to just read the first verse, and I'm not trying to drag this out. It's just what happens. 2 Chronicles chapter 27, verse 1 says, Jotham was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jerusha, the daughter of Zadok. So just on the beginning of it, there have been younger kings. Obviously, 25 is not super young, but it's not really all that mature either. When we were 25 years old, we did stupid things. Well, I'd say less stupid than when we were 17. Within reason. Javier's like, man, I've been an adult ever since. I don't know what you're talking about. But we've had a tendency to do things that were less mature when we were young. And so you'll see that the age needs to be more for king. There is actually an age limit, like you can't be younger than this, right? Or you can't be shorter than this, that kind of thing. But even for the president of the United States, what's it, 36 if I remember right? I think it is. Say it again. Yeah, they don't want some, wet behind the ears young buck doing it, because there was some kid that was like the mayor of a city, and of course, what do you do when you're the mayor of a city? Apparently this kid, or whatever, I don't know. But you got to listen to people, and always get your head straight. So he was a fairly young king. Now, we've seen this with other kings that were fairly young, that there could be some problems, or there was following things that they shouldn't have done. But something is interesting about Jotham that I don't think we find in the other kings. And it's because I believe, as we read through about Uzziah and so on, I believe that Uzziah loved God. Just absolutely loved God. And I think that carried on to Jotham, his son. And I'm confident that when Uzziah had sinned and tried to take the place of a priest and all that stuff, and Jotham had to take over, I think that about the influence that might be. So you have somebody really kind of on the job training you to get you functional and get you doing the right thing. Not to say that, just day one you're thrown into the job. And I would say it like this too. When we have people raising us up in ministry, we're more functional, more successful than if we just try to strike out on our own for whatever random reason. We have a kitten right now, and I'm not trying to give all our personal information, but I'm going to tell you about this. We got a kitten that we probably got too young, right? It wasn't weaned properly. And he's replacing a cat that was also the same problem. People are like, oh, look, I did a cat, and it's we can get rid of it now. Well, you can't, because there's things that it had needed developmental things from mom. We don't know. We get the kitten, here you go, God bless you. But there's developmental things that we need to do. I think we need to be brought up and taught up, right? And I think the reason that we're going to see a better king out of Jotham is that he was raised, he was reared, and he was taught to be king, and he had the oversight of dad helping him out. Now, that's just my suspicion, but that's what it looks like when I look in here, because Jotham had the task of being or acting as king while he still had supervision. Am I maybe seeing this wrong? I don't think I'm seeing it too far wrong, at least. But you see that the level of raise up. Now let me throw one other thing at you. I'm going to tell you something that you don't understand, and that's okay. I don't mind. But I was talking with another pastor, and I'm going to give you the wisdom from the pastor's side of life. And you can be like, whatever, dude. As pastor, I get to see, hear, and experience things that you don't. I'm not trying to make you jealous. It's just in every job, there's like the dark underbelly of what the job is, right? And it's hard to resonate with what goes on unless you're in it yourself. I say that because it's true. I have a friend of mine, he was explaining to me, he goes, man, when I was the number 2 here at this church, and he's now the senior pastor at that church, but he said, when I was the number 2 at this church, what I would do is I would tell the pastor, hey, this, hey, that. if you would just do this, if you would just do that. He had all sorts of wisdom and knowledge, and I had that too at one time. I was smarter than I thought, or at least I was not nearly as smart as I thought I was, maybe. But he said that, so when this guy left, he rotated back over to California, as some Calvary guys do, and he takes over the church. He's doing this, and he goes, and 6 months into it, I call him up and I apologize to him. I say that because you don't often know what it's like to be in a position until you're in that position. And I don't care what position it is, you're doing something that before you got into it, you thought, well, it's going to work out like this. But when you're in it, well, there's things that you didn't know, and you don't know until you're tried by fire. I think having Uzziah around, even in the form of leprosy, was beneficial to Jotham. That's just my theory. Now, I could be horribly wrong on this one, but I think that helped him a great deal, because listen how this all worked out. Verse number 2, and he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord according to all that his father Uzziah had done, except he did not enter the temple of the Lord, but the people still followed corrupt practices. So in the form of leadership and how he was functioning, he saw the problems of what his dad had done, and he said, you know what, I'm not going to do this. It's always easier when you can learn from someone else's mistakes. The lessons tend to stay longer when it's our own, but it's smarter, easier, and a better practice to learn from other people's mistakes. And so he did this. Now, there's still kind of a feeling in here. You're not going to see anything negative written about Jotham. I think he was a good king overall. And he did what he lived an example of a life to others. As believers, you and I ought to do that, right? And I think he did that okay. He lived as an example to others in his life, and he, basically put a good effort in, rather, as to how it should be done. And I think he did a fine job. But it says there, and the caveat in verse 2 says, but the people still followed corrupt practices. Let me say this. The king, the president, the governor, whoever, there's influence that happens because of political leadership. And let's be perfectly honest, a king is political leadership. And so you see certain levels of influence or certain levels of leadership, let's say. When Obama was president, there's a lot of people who didn't agree with him. But the country started changing to be more like Obama. When George W. Bush was president, not everybody liked the guy. But you see kind of movement of people kind of going that direction. Same with Clinton, same with Trump, same with Biden. Whoever's in leadership has an influence and an effect on people. But not everyone. That's not good. If you had influence on everyone, then there would be no political change because everybody would start going down that aisle. And so there's always dissenters and people who will push back. And so I don't think this falls on Jotham as a bad thing. I think this is just the natural effects of it. Is everybody in the country a Christian? Well, no. You have atheists and pagans and all sorts of weird stuff. Is everyone in the country, it's like you can just go through the list, piece after piece after piece, and you find something interesting, and that's that there are dissenters. When people try to narrow me down politically speaking, I just always tell them I don't fit. Well, are you Republican or Democrat? And the answer is no. Like, well, which one are you? You don't have to be one of those. I'm not a political person. I do hold on to values and so on, and I vote based on my values. But I look at the Democrat Party and I look at the Republican Party, and I think they're both a joke. Just my opinion. Are there good people inside of them? Of course there are. They're fantastic ones on both sides, strangely enough. But I don't agree with them all the way. So we're going to have dissent in our lives. And I think those people that you see that were not following God, but following corrupt practices, even though Jotham was a good king, you can't hold that against Jotham because people are people. And then let me think about it this way. You've seen parents raise up a child, and almost in rebellion, the child will do something opposite of what the parents do. The interesting side of that is sometimes you'll see some really bad parents with some really fantastic kids. And sometimes you'll see some really fantastic parents with some awful kids, because there tends to be a rebellion against the parent. Now, if your kids are bad, that doesn't mean you're good. You're probably a horrible parent. Anyways, no. If you have good kids, of course you're me. No. We just try to throw the bias in because, that's how it works. Anyways, so there's going to be a time of rebellion, so we can't let that go. But we still know that Jotham was a good king, kind of like Joe's a good dad, right? Support the kids. Do what you got to do. But Jotham was a good king. Now, let's look at the things that he did. Let's look at the next two verses 3 and 4. It says, he built the upper gate of the house of the Lord and did much building on the wall of Ophel. Moreover, he built cities in the hill country of Judah and forts and towers on the wooded hills. And so you think about it, he's doing infrastructure jobs. He's building things, and he's making the area safer. Now, to be perfectly honest, where does safety come in Israel? Well, it comes from God. Well, he's in Judah. No, it still comes from God. And if you're trying to, as a nation, now let me say this. I'm going to say something controversial now, but America is not a Christian nation. America is an agnostic nation built on Christian principles. Make sense? You do not have to worship Jesus. You don't have to be a Christian to be in America. I think that's a foolish endeavor, but that's not a requirement. So we can't by that means say that it's a Christian nation. However, it was built on Christian principles. So we wouldn't expect God to protect America. They would say, oh, God bless America. That's fine. And I hope that happens. And the more that people follow Jesus, the better you're going to see things in America. However, the predominant view is not Christian. Maybe it was, but it's not now. In Israel, the predominant view was God as creator. Was. Today's Israel doesn't look so much like that. In fact, they would go in waves even back in these days. Back in the time of the judges, it could be a good season or it could be a bad season. In the bad seasons, they all reject God. But overall, Israel was God's chosen people for the purpose of bringing forth the Messiah, and when that occurred, they had fulfilled what they were supposed to do, but God has still got them in another place. That's teachings from months ago. But with that said, with how it was working there, you have God taking care of stuff. That's his nation, and God will take care of them, and part of that is Jotham rebuilding the infrastructure to protect them. You have to protect your people. And so he did just that. Verse number 5. It says he fought with the king of the Ammonites and prevailed against them. And the Ammonites gave him that year 100 talents of silver, 10,000 cores of wheat, and 10,000 of barley. The Ammonites paid him the same amount in the second and third years. So Jotham became mighty because he ordered his way before the Lord his God. Think about this. And this is a hard one for me. And I'm telling you right now, this is a struggle that I'm going through probably continually in my life. God supplies for us. But you got to be serving God. I'm not saying to be stupid and be foolish, but know that God supplies when we are faithful. Like, well, how does that look? Well, it looks different for everyone. Somebody, more might be provided, and some it'll be less. But what I've found is that God takes care of the needs. Now, in the situation with Jotham, he's the king, and prosperity coming to the nation is quite helpful. We need to be careful not to get hooked into this prosperity gospel mindset that people will use the Old Testament to say, individually, you have to be a gazillionaire or whatever like that. Pray over this land, over this car, or over this yacht, whatever it is, and just forget all that stuff. God provides for our needs, not our excesses. Now, you'll find some people that God lets have excess, and that's fine. That's their burden in life, or their pleasure, whatever the thing is, I don't know. But as far as it goes with what God is doing in the nation Israel, especially at this time, is because of the faithfulness of him, you're seeing things go well. And there's a reason given in verse 6 where it says, so Jotham became mighty because what? He ordered his ways before the Lord his God. The why is answered because he followed what God said. Essentially, let's just call it what it is. He followed the direction that God gave him to follow. And so that's the reason that Jotham was doing well. That's the reason that he was so functional. And then, we won't call him amazing, but, he did, whatever, he did right. I wanted to bring a point up here, and hopefully you'll track with me on this. Let's go ahead and read a little bit more, and I want to do a couple thoughts on this when we finish up. Look at verse 7. So it says, now the rest of the acts of Jotham and all his wars and ways, behold, they are written in the book of the kings of Israel and Judah. He was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. And Jotham slept with his fathers, and they buried him in the city of David, and Ahaz his son reigned in his place. I find it both interesting and troubling that so little is written about Jotham. There's a truth that I don't think we like. When things are going well, no one pays attention. When things are going okay, we stop praying. Hey God, there's a horrible situation, it's bad. But everything's rolling smooth, just keep on cruising, baby. Well, weren't you going to pray? We'll do that later. Right now, everything's going smooth. And we forget that belongs to God. But what happens is, let's throw it like this. When you watch the news, who in here watches the news still? Anybody still watch that stuff? Yeah, every now and again. All right, I'll ask you, since how you are one watcher of news, there are the people that are just not willing to say it. Anyways, is it primarily good or bad? Bad. And if it's not bad, it's at least provocative. Say it again. Count the shootings. You just opened up another place in my brain, so we're going to explore that for just a second. But you're right. You see the only the bad news. There is and this is to my Second Amendment kind of people. We have a right to bear arms based on the United States gives us that right to bear arms and all that stuff. And if you want to carry a pistol or a bazooka, knock yourself out. The shootings, you said, is what they can count on the news. But when it's a self-defense shooting that saved a lot of lives, do you know where you don't see it? You don't see it on the news. And I think I'm glad you said that, because that brings out to my brain the bigger example of this. When we see bad things, we got tons of stuff to talk about. Of course, we're Christians, so we don't gossip, we share. But we're not as enamored or hooked in by the good news. Oh, look, a little old lady had something nice happen to her. She got a brand new thing from her grandson. Oh, what a blessing. Would never make the news. An old woman gets run over by they always get run over by an SUV, right? Do what? Oh, the bus. That's even worse. You're oh man, you're a mess. So the old lady gets run over by the bus, right? That's on the news. The bus driver, he was looking kind of was he looking at the road or whatever like that? And they start trying to figure out, and they dig down deep and they try to figure out the nuance and details of it. But what about when someone's living well? Why don't we make a big fuss about that? And I would tell you that it's human nature to not do that. It's not provocative. It's not interesting. And I don't know how to correct that. Because as I was looking at this passage, I thought, well, Jotham, he was a good king. Why didn't they write anything? Yeah, he only reigned for a short period of time. He reigned 16 years, which tells us that he was 41 when he died. He did good stuff. He was a good king. He had good character. And nobody cared. Let me tell you, that's a lie. God cared about this man. We don't see all the nuance and the details and every piece that's in it. We don't see all the small details of that, but we know that God loved this man. And, it's like, well, so what? He didn't have a big, eventful whatever. It doesn't matter. With the current age that we're living in, YouTube, I say that we're on YouTube now. Ha ha ha. But people want to become YouTube sensations. My wife was telling me about, they're called auditors. And so these people go out and they try to put a cop in some kind of a, situation because that gets clicks and so on like that. Do what? Stressing the First Amendment, she says. But it's for clicks. They're doing it to be seen, to be known, or whatever like that, to be famous. Everybody's looking for that 15 minutes of fame or whatever. You can be famous for the right reasons, famous for the wrong reasons, but people still think that there's something about the fame. And what I want to point out to you is this. God doesn't seem to care about the fame. He just doesn't. When we're interacting with stuff like that, we need a good story. Well, good story has problems and has good pieces to it, right? But what about, I woke up this morning, I prayed, I ate, brushed my teeth, kissed the dog, kicked the wife, that kind of thing. Just go throughout my day, everything's wonderful. There's nothing to talk about at the end of the day. If I come home to my wife and I said, she says, how was your day? And I said, well, everything just went right. There was nothing bad to report. She'll come away with that going, oh, good for him. But it's boring. But if I come home to her and I tell her, hey, this heinous thing happened, this guy, he had 6 toes on 1 foot. And for some reason he was showing everybody. No? You don't like this story so far? But it's something weird. You're like, we got something to talk about, some grit and some stuff on it. But I want to tell you something. And that's fine to have the interest, and that's fine to have the balance of the story and all that. I'm not saying anything against that. But what I'm saying is if you're serving God, you don't necessarily have that. You do see that it wasn't a perfect, seamless everything. But he was just doing what God told him to do, and it all worked out. We can come away as Christians, as believers, and when we try to interact with somebody's life, and somebody in their life, or we're trying to tell them about the gospel at work, wherever like that, and you come across these weird stories because people are strange. A guy I work with from time to time, he goes, man, you got to write a book about all these weird things that happen to you. I'm like, it's not me. People are weird. We want to live a good life. We want to live a boring life. Let me say that. Let your excitement be your farmyard animals. Let your excitement be the hobby that you have, making a thing or a stuff, whatever it is. It's not super eventful, but whatever you do as to the Lord. Very seldom do you see somebody getting all the big awards for doing all the right things. But you'll see them when they're a serial killer. How much TV time did OJ have as a killer versus a football player, right? Nobody cared what he thought about when he was running with the football. But you go stab your wife, now they want to hear you. Do what? He doesn't know who OJ is. What? The juice. Yeah. Anyways, all that to say this. I know we're just being crazy and silly now. But if you're not living the most exciting, adventurous, YouTube-worthy life, you're probably serving God, and that's not a bad thing. If you're serving God and you see some conflict coming, that's fine. But that's not you. You just seen that stuff coming at you. I'm not saying we're shooting for a boring life, but man, it wouldn't hurt my feelings to have a boring life sometimes. I'm telling you right now. Yeah, yes. I get tired of the weird stuff. But that to say also, if you're serving God, you're going to have some problems. You're going to run across some things. It's not like it's just an inoculation against bad stuff. But don't be upset for the quiet years, because that's when God's really doing amazing work in you. And you're doing amazing things for God. So embrace the life of Jotham, the most boring guy in the Bible, because we don't know that much about him. But what we do know about him, he was faithful to God. And everything that he did well. He didn't try to cross the line that his dad did by trying to take on a job that wasn't his. He stayed in his own lane and lived his life for Jesus. We say not Jesus. Listen, he lived his life for Melchizedek, right? Man was living his life for God. Maybe that's somebody we ought to look up to. Maybe that's somebody we should see in the right light. So just a short few words about a king that was good. Hey, there's a lot more written about Ahab. That's all I'm going to tell you. All right, well, let's pray. Lord, we thank you this evening. We're thankful, Lord, that you love us and that you've given us even just a short message about Jotham. Lord, what a mighty man, living and functioning the way he did. Lord, that there was no controversy. There was no disdain for him. But Lord, the fact that he just kind of was there. Lord, may we just be there. May we be the people who are simply serving and not causing problems. We ask, Lord, for the strength to do just that, to be your people. Lord, to see the difference, to make the difference. So help us as we go through this time. We do ask for your mercy, your love, and your compassion. We ask all